We're good?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was my
No,
last,
I wasn't sure if it was
it
frozen.
was my last one. Hold on, until the board member comes in, just.
We are recording now,
Thank you very
and the
much.
mic is hot.
Excellent.
There we go.
All right.
My 11-man type tool.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening, Ms. Gerald.
Hi there.
Hi there.
We are recording the meeting, just so you're aware. Michelle Perry Scott does the minutes for us, the highlights. So we record it and give her the recording. Dr. Davey, if you're good and our board members are good, we can jump into it.
Yes, I think so. Ms. Gerald, thank you for joining us. Ms. Saunders, thank you for joining us. It's two of our board members. I'm also going to join just so I can keep an eye on the screen as well. And I'll just keep my camera. I don't need my camera on, so to speak, but thank you, and thank you for being here. And traditionally, our budget committee meeting at the end of November, early December is when we review our reconciliations, which is really an update of how the year is going, and looking at the financial picture in terms of now that enrollments are in place and the year is operational. And so we look forward to some updates, some good discussions, and then for our board members, if you'll be prepared, to ask, not only questions, but also provide any updates that you think appropriate at the board meeting as well. We'll be happy to support that as well. Okay, so Mr. Bell, we'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Davey. Jumping right in to discuss the budget process and timeline, like Dr. Davey said, today we'll be looking at reconciliations as well as discussing parameters as we set budgets moving forward. That'll be the important piece, because looking at our timeline, the next item, next meeting that this budget committee will have in January will be to review budgets and discuss what our budgets are looking like, so we can make a recommendation for board review at the February board meeting, and then share with our superintendents that following Friday after the board meeting. So a lot of things gonna happen between this meeting and the next one. So we'll go into a little bit of discussions of parameters as we set budgets going forward. First item up on the agenda, though, is our review of our budget committee meeting highlights. Give the committee any opportunity for discussion, topics, or anything that they want to follow up on in regards to the highlights. And we do have Christine Myers joining us virtually, so hi, Christine. All right, next item up is budget reconciliations, and I'll start by saying thank you to Mrs. Perry Scott, who is our senior account clerk typist, who's my administrative assistant, for putting together this packet for the board. And Ms. Giro, she did email it to you directly, so you should have got it digitally. She was the mastermind in organizing this and making it neat and looking good, so much credit to her working with our team. We're going to look at the budget reconciliations, and like we do in our other meetings, I'll run through really a global view of what we're looking at financially in each of our divisions, and then give our directors and assistant superintendent opportunity to add some further information of what we're looking at, and then as well Dr. Davey to chime in on anything that he'd like to add as well. If we want to dive into any pieces of this, feel free to ask questions. We're happy to discuss it as in-depth as you would like as a budget committee member. So first off, kudos to our accounting team of Kobe Siskavich and Jessica LeClaire, working shorthanded. We just had our accountant start on Monday, our third accountant. They have been working shorthanded for over a month in our division, and we're now in the journey of training. And that comes under the general guidance, supervision, and leadership of Christine Myers as our district treasurer. So the teams worked very well with our divisions, our assistant superintendent, as well as our division directors and their teams to come up with these budget reconciliations. So I want to give them all the credit in the world. So it'll be my voice, but it's not my hard work. It's really our team that's come together to present this to you today. So let's start with special education. We had talked last time about enrollment and enrollment being up, and we'll get into some enrollment numbers next. But now we're gonna be able to show you what does that mean dollar-wise, given those enrollments. We break down our special education budget, and it's a little small. I know that, especially here in person. With our 200 budget codes, we would like to always highlight those and pull them separate. Those are our classrooms. And those are our programs, autism program, our academic behavior program, our life skills program, and then our ITSP or intensive therapeutic support program. And we like to see those stand alone as separate budgets based on the enrollment and the tuitions that have been set by the board going into this year, and then really the management of the team to have them be break even or at a surplus level. So I'm here to say each one of our programs at this point in time are operating in a surplus capacity. So 205, if you look in the highlighted area, that's our potential surplus. Again, it's a projection at this point in time. We are very early in the year. We do have fluctuations in enrollment. We'll touch on that in a little bit. And one tuition amount ranges from $42,000 all the way up to $84,000 per student. So realize that big fluctuations do happen in our special education budget. But right now, if you look at the 205 autism budget, we're projecting a surplus of just under $120,000. Our 208, our academic behavioral program, we're looking at just under $392,000 surplus. Life skills are 210, COSER, just over $266,000 surplus. And then our ITSP intensive therapeutic support program, COSER 220, $19,000 surplus. We do provide some additional information that we think is relevant to look at where do we budget our students at when we set budgets back in January, February timeframe of last year, 2021. So you can see in each of those programs from where we had budgeted our FTE enrollment to where we are in this reconciliation. It's a November analysis. We are higher. Our enrollment is up in every single one of those programs. Great news financially from a revenue perspective, from a management perspective, it becomes the challenge, right? How do you react to that and meet the needs of those students? And that's something that our team has been doing really all summer long in preparation for this school year and into this fall, and continue to do that because districts are still knocking on our door to have students come into our fantastic programming that's being offered. The other breakdown items that we show here are our related services or our itinerant services that are provided to districts is a better way to say it. So you can see each one of those COSERs are operating in a surplus capacity as well, which is fantastic news at this point in time in the year. Those all generate to a total surplus of just under $160,000. And if you look at our classroom COSERs, those totaled, the 200 COSERs totaled to just under $800,000, which gives us an overall surplus at this point in time at $956,000 in 841. Big item I want to touch on there, we're early in the process. We have hiring to do. We have support and needs that are out there. So that surplus that is there today is not one that is anticipated to be there at the end of the year because we are still actively working to meet the needs of those students, which is trying to fill some vacancies and bring on those supports, which include buying some equipment, supplies, and different items that are going to impact this budget. I'm going to touch on one other thing, which is your next page, before I pass it to Director Slattery and Dr. Davey for further comment. The next page is just that change in enrollment. We touched on at the beginning of this is our enrollment's up across, it's above budget in every single one of our classroom COSERs. The next sheet, which is titled 4A, you'll see we're up 13 students from budget overall. And we've given you a little history of prior years. When we had started this timeline, we showed October last year when we're sitting in our November meeting. I want to point that out in our second grid. We were below budget in 3 of the 4. And we were talking about major deficits with this board. So we're in quite a different situation than we were last year. But realize last year when we were below budget and at a big deficit, we did gain ground from that October to that June time. And in particular, our 208 coaster increased by 6 students all by itself. So there's still growth that can happen. There's still loss that could happen. It all depends on situations and needs of students, families, and our component school districts. So some history there, something that we like to analyze. I know with Director Slattery last year, a lot of our conversation was, yeah, that's where we are in October of 2020, but where do we end up in June typically? That was our big conversation last year because it's important to plan ahead. Are we going to expect a surplus or are we going to expect a deficit? I will tell you at this point in time, we are expecting a surplus in our special education programming, given where we're at today, unless there are drastic changes that happen between now and the end of the year. With that being said, I'm going to pass over to Director Slattery for anything else you'd like to add about the program in special education in regards to budget recons.
Thank you, Assistant Superintendent Bill. I think you said it very well. I'd like to thank our business accountant, Jessica Claire. She's great to work with, excellent with the numbers. And does a very nice job of explaining it. Enrollment is up, which is a good thing. With enrollment up, we do have to increase our staffing and services and supports within the building that we're working on doing now. This is an ongoing effort with recruitment and working with our HR department to get good qualified people in the door to train them so they can support our students. When I say enrollment is up, it is up between both between both campuses. So our Mineville campus and our Plattsburgh campus. So we're excited about that. Faculty and staff are doing a great job. Our admin team is doing a great job. And our districts are really happy with the service that's being provided. So we want to keep that going moving forward. And right now, our number one priority is, like I said, staffing those supports to get them in place for the student, the increase in student population.
Any questions for the special education division budget reconciliations?
I just wanted to know, I know the last time we talked about some of the critical staff were social workers that you were, I think, in the process of interviewing. Can you just summarize what the staffing needs are for those areas?
Yeah, great question, Mrs. Giro. So we have an itinerant school psychologist that's retiring at the end of this month. And she has a very specific skill set. In addition to the school psychologist portion, she's also fluent when it comes to sign language. And so her dual role supports 2 districts, 4 days a week for the school psychologist portion. And then the other day is through that fluent, not interpreter, but for the fluent counseling piece. We're not going to be able to find that specific skill set to replace her. We've been fortunate to have her on staff for over 30 years. Amazing lady, Jalekla. So what we're going to do, we do have 3 school psychologists on staff within the division. We'll be backfilling Mrs. Ekla with James Anderson, one of our school psychologists down in Mineville. And then we're going to backfill James with a social worker position. We had 4 great applicants we interviewed a few weeks ago, and we are prepared to make a recommendation to Dr. Davies' office. We're just finishing the hiring process right now and checking some boxes on our end. That will take care of our Mineville campus with staffing, but in addition to that, in working with Jess LeClaire, we are going to be looking into another position to support our Plattsburgh campus. And that other position, we're hopeful that'll be also a social worker position.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, and the other thing, Ms. Giro, that has continued to be an area of major need is our student aides. So right now we've had, the high need. I know we've been reaching out and advertising and hiring aides along the way. So right now, Mr. Slattery, I know that that's an area that we've discussed that there's a high number. And we started off in a pretty good place. We hired a number of staff a number of aides, and that need has seemed to increase as new students have enrolled again.
Yeah, you're exactly right, Dr. Davies. So we were in a pretty good place at the beginning of the year, better than we were the previous year with staffing. I believe we brought in 20 students, give or take, at the beginning of the school year. May have been more. I think 27 actually total. But of those 27, I think it was in the high teens that needed that one-to-one aid service. So that's working with HR for recruitment efforts. The nice thing is we do have a constant flow. It's not as many that's meeting our needs. And a good example is our principals from Dr. Stay from our Mineville campus, and then Principal Valenzuela and Principal O'Connell just completed some interviews, made some recommendations to me. That paperwork is headed over to our district office, Dr. Davies' office, for final approval. So we do have a steady, I'm gonna call it a steady stream at this point in time. We need more, so it's all about recruitment. I do have to give our staff credit. We have a staff member down at our Mineville campus that has done a really great job in terms of taking it upon herself to recruit out of Essex County. And then also out of our Plattsburgh campus, we have a teacher that's done a really nice job recruiting and has gotten, I want to say a handful of applicants to apply that want to work in our programming, supporting students with special needs. So it's a constant need that we're working on filling. And because of that need right now, we are unable to bring in students right now that need that one-on-one support service until we can hire those additional positions to fill those needs that we currently have.
Any other questions for our special education division budget reconciliations?
And I'll just note, Mr. Slattery, that, your team, your accountant, and also your staff and administrators have really worked closely with you to create a positive budget reconciliation. And so that it's positive, and with that being said, knowing that there are some staff that we'll need to fill, and we will work, let the board know about those updates as well. We're on solid footing and in a good place, and any money that's left over at the end of the year does go back to the school districts as well.
Yeah, we're really happy to be in this position, especially like Mr. Bell explained last year. We were in a deficit, so it is a good position to be in, and now we're working on staffing those needs.
Great. Next item up.
I just want to point out that Lisa Boyce has joined us.
Good evening.
She was having some difficulty getting in.
Excellent.
Yeah, thank you for joining us, Mrs. Boyce. We are underway, and we do have the hybrid meeting, so we appreciate you joining us as well.
Yep, and you should have received an email from Ms. Perry Scott with the budget packet.
I
did,
thank you.
Excellent. We're moving into CV Tech now, and if you did have any questions about special ed, I'm happy to jump to them at any time. But we're gonna look at the CV Tech budget reconciliation. I'll run through it and then give Director Freeman an opportunity to add comments on programming and any budget items as well. So the first item on 4B, page 1, is really a look at revenue. We really want to start there and see the revenue flowing into the CV Tech division and focus primarily on that to start. So as we look at the top part of that page, you'll see the enrollment averaging number. So last meeting, we talked about enrollment averaging. The enrollment average for this year for a 5-year rolling average was 576.87 students. We talked about our enrollment being up, but we didn't give you that exact number. So we want to bring today, given the enrollment, of course, we used the 10-1 date because those were the numbers we were using last time as well. What is the enrollment that would go into the enrollment averaging formula? That number is 671. So 95 more than what the enrollment average is. Now, the lock-in date is December 1st, so that is tomorrow. So our team's itching to hit the lock button on the doors and go from there. No more drops. Drops, I guess, would be accepted, but they wouldn't count towards the enrollment averaging formula. So what we have to look at, though, is in a 5-year average, what is the number falling off? So our average is 576, just shy of 577. 5 years ago, what was the enrollment of CV Tech as it applies to the enrollment averaging formula is the important number. And as we went through budget season last year, Director Friedman and our team had discussions about we potentially have a budget issue because we had a larger number coming off. It was one of our largest numbers in the enrollment averaging formula. So we're really focused on to see when we're starting this year, were we going to be able to maintain a enrollment average of 576 was our concern. Again, this was back in March and we're going through a pandemic. I will say we blew that number away. That number falling off is 588.61. So significantly higher. Our lock-in number isn't going to be 671, but it will be above that 588. So our enrollment average formula inevitably will go up. And we'll do that new calculation after tomorrow. And at our next meeting, we'll share that with the budget committee, what that means. Jumping down and looking at some of our other budgets, really just looking at the revenue, that's the big piece of this. Adult students in daytime programs as of November 1st was $300 under our budget. And you can see our tuition there is $7,800. New Vision Applied Engineering is 14 below our budget. And originally that would probably be a cause for panic. However, coming into this year, our team was aware of what the enrollment was looking like, and Director Friedman worked to have a different model versus what was planned during budget session. So the plan during budget was have an instructor in Plattsburgh, instructor in Mineville. We'd be running 2 sessions. The team made a change based on enrollment numbers early in the ballgame, and we didn't fill a vacant New Vision Applied Engineering teacher. Therefore, it had the cost savings to cover that shortfall in tuition. So we have an instructor that travels to Mineville every single day and back. So really a move made by the division in order to maintain that budget with a shortfall in revenue, but also one that the instructor is stepping up to do that travel and provide high quality program as far as the New Vision Applied Engineering program goes.
Right, and I'll just add too, and want to compliment Mrs. Friedman. It was a tremendous and really exciting New Vision's introduction day at the Advanced Manufacturing Center at Clinton Community College. And I know that the board saw some pictures of those. And we had an update at the last board meeting. It was a phenomenal day. I think you had 36 or 37 students, and 6 of them were current students that were there. So there's a potential, really strong enrollment that's hoped for, and really a quality program that, we're establishing, and also paying it forward to really establish a strong program. And the thing that I was most impressed with, and I know Mrs. Friedman, you put a lot of work into this and worked with our CTE committee and the superintendents and everyone, is that the students can not only have a successful New Vision's pre-engineering program, but also gain up to 27 college credits as part of it, which is amazing. And they're SUNY college credits. They're from the community colleges, and so students essentially could move into college following that program with a successful completion as sophomores, which is absolutely amazing. Yeah, so great job, Mrs. Friedman, to our team.
Thank you, Dr. Davey. The next item on New Vision Applied Engineering is the constant reminder that you hear from our team is that there's one more year, and then it rolls into enrollment average. So as part of our enrollment average formula, any new program survives on its own separate budget, own separate tuition for 3 years, then it goes into the enrollment average formula. So as we build budgets for the new year, we have to realize that we're 1 year, one budget cycle away from preparing to absorb that budget cost into the CTE budget as tied to enrollment averaging revenue. So what that means is $275,000 plus of a budget now comes into an enrollment averaging formula. So that'll be part of our multi-year budget planning, and it has been for the last 2 years, but it becomes more of a pressing item as we get closer to that rolling in. Next is our high school job target students, often referred to as pre-CTE students. This was the one referenced last year where our enrollment's way up. And this one really helps to drive added revenue to our CV Tech programming. You can see 21.8 students above what was budgeted, which equates to almost $345,000 in revenue, additional revenue above budget. Again, it goes to a similar conversation like we did with special ed. It becomes a supporting the needs of students issue. It becomes a staffing item, so that's not free revenue. Those students have supports and needs that the CV Tech divisions had to be nimble and react to provide support. So again, but looking at it as a whole, if we just look at revenue, revenue alone is about $150,000 above where it was budgeted. And that's without any additional revenue for enrollment averaging. Next, I want to look at page 2 and 3 and then give Director Friedman an opportunity to talk. I know I'm saying a lot here. I'll try to be briefer. Looking at the individual budgets, if you go to page 2, 4B, page 2, it gives a breakdown. In 101, 102, 104 used to be important when we did tuition per child, and it really took a look at per campus. I will tell you that revenue is distributed based on 70, 15, 15. That had been a consistent way that revenue was allocated from enrollment averaging to the different campuses. I will tell you our enrollments fluctuated, but we haven't changed that methodology yet. So really where we want to highlight your attention is to the orange column, or the total of 101, 102, 104, where all that enrollment averaging revenue flows in, as well as some other tuition revenue that flows into those budgets, to show that it is operating in an overall surplus in all three of those areas, to the tune of $164,586. So very positive there for our programming at this point in time. Next, I want to jump to the blue, which is our 115, 116 coasters. Those are the pre-CTE or those high school job target students that we talked about, projecting a surplus there of just under $360,000. I'm going to dial it back a little bit just to say that we have some staffing shifts that are probably going to happen to support the needs of those students. When those staffing shifts happen, there'll be more allocated costs in those areas, automatically impacting that surplus. But right now, at this point in time, very positive place to be for the pre-CT programming 115, 116, giving a total surplus at this point in time of just above $500,000 in the CV Tech division. Lastly, page 3, adult education, our 103 coaster. This is one where our districts sign on and sponsor our adult education programming and CTE. They say that if there's any surplus, we get the money back, but if there's any deficit, we're going to support that coaster. Without those sponsorships, we couldn't operate this programming. We do have all 16 component school districts in this supporting our 103 coaster, which I think last year, Michelle, was our first year with all of them. So really happy that they're all coming back this year and supporting it. Our big item here is LPN. You may recall last year, or I should have said our big deficit, not a big item. Our big deficit here is our LPN programming, and the cost to operate that programming being higher than what the tuition being charged is. There was big changes last year, I believe it was, or was it 2 years ago? And Michelle, I'll let you touch on LPN in a little bit. What's driving our overall adult ed budget to be positive is the adult ed evening courses and partnership that's been ongoing, and I'm saving that for Michelle to really tout that in those revenues. So I'll ask her to touch on LPN and adult ed evening in a second. But overall in our adult ed, our surplus right now is projected at just over $12,000. It's important that these programs continue to run, as well as some projections that the division is making for continuing adult ed opportunities going into the spring. Those revenues have been built into here. So living through a pandemic, we never know what's going to happen. So we have some assumptions we're making today, but overall, it's a general positive picture. So with that being said, I will now pass it to Director Friedman.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And Dr. Davey, thank you for your words about New Visions Engineering. This is a fledgling program, as Eric had mentioned. And when we did budget last year, we did anticipate 2 sessions and 2 teachers. What we weren't able to do last year was do any recruitment whatsoever, other than just word of mouth from the previous 14 students that showed up in the middle of a pandemic, and we had to run the program. We didn't expect to. So with that being said, we were actually quite pleased to have 10 students that were willing to take the risk. So we did change the model. Steve Kuchar is traveling back and forth. So please don't be alarmed by that loss. That was the loss in the budget that we built. It wasn't that we lost $172,000. So I just want to please make sure. And the day that Dr. Davy was speaking of is what we call our Junior Experience Day. In the design of the program, it was intended that we would run 2 Junior Experience Days per year, one in the fall, one in the spring, target the potential seniors that would be interested, and have the current students participate shoulder to shoulder and really grow from within. So we were very pleased to have 41 students participating from 9 districts. It was very well received. We expect to do it again in the spring, as long as we're allowed to with, what's going on with the pandemic. And the budget projections for the build that we do will again include both campuses and 2 teachers, because it is the expectation that the New Visions engineering program will take the same trajectory as our New Visions medical careers, which currently has 36 students seated. So there is a lot of potential for growth, and it's 2 years in the middle of a pandemic, with every single possible roadblock thrown at us. We're still running the program. So we're very optimistic that once the world goes back to whatever normal is, that this program will continue to grow and be a profitable one. I wanted to just make a note about for B, looking at those numbers, as Eric had mentioned, it is not that the Mineville Center is running in deficit. It's because of the distribution of the 5-year averaging, the way we kind of allocate funds to the campuses. We do have a larger than expected enrollment on that campus, which did cause us to add a teacher assistant to the conservation program down there. So there was some additional unanticipated expenses, with 94 additional students and no additional revenue. So that's why the 115 and 116 is so critical, because what we will do is we will allocate more of our support staff, our counselors, our other academic staff into these budgets to support those additional 115 and 116 students, which will then allow us that money to be freed up in the 101, 102, 104. So you'll see some shifts in that as we move forward. To address the adult education in the 103s, for at least 5 years that I was here as director, this COSER ran in the hundreds of thousands of dollar deficit because of this sustaining of the Plattsburgh Aeronautical Institute, and basically just the O&M costs of operating a hangar. When we first started the program, we had 72 students in that PAI program, and I never saw numbers like that. My numbers were in the single digits, and so for those of you who have been at this table for a few years, this is probably one of the healthier 103 budgets that you've seen at this point in time during a budget cycle. So the LPN program often runs in deficit for a multitude of reasons. However, the rationale under the LPN deficit is simply because of COVID restrictions on clinicals. The group sizes have to be smaller. The supervision still needs to happen. So if we had one group that we were paying clinical hours for supervision, we now have double, because a group of 10 is now a group of 5, and that teacher has to go twice. So we are seeing an increase in cost in our clinical supervision and some other components. The CARES Act money last year allowed us to offset a lot of that. And we had 2 of our students exit the program within the first quarter. So that is a revenue loss according to our tuition reimbursement policy. I know this sounds terrible, but it's not a bad deficit. It really isn't, especially since 103 operates as one number. So when we see surplus in the adult evening course in that second column of $41,000, this is a program that was not existent until our partnership with the North Country Chamber of Commerce, who received a state grant for unemployed workers training grant. And they put together a grant package of 3 program training opportunities, 2 of which they are operating under our umbrella, the medical office and a food service. There is also a manufacturing program that Clinton Community College was asked to operate. Our medical office program is the only one that ran. However, it was spectacularly received, and we expect to have at least 1 more iteration, if not 2. The cost is $2,500 per student. The students do not pay anything. It's all covered through the grant. And the overhead on that particular program is almost nothing. We do the Ed2Go under the 411, so we'll have to shift some so that surplus will be a little bit less. But there are just wonderful things happening. The expansion of our CDL program, we will see significant growth in the surplus, I believe, in CDL, and also CDL-B, which isn't listed here, but will be as soon as we have a cohort to run. And if the food service program runs, that'll be another revenue stream as well. So I'm really pleased to see the 103 going in a healthy trajectory and being able to offer some more and innovative programming to the community at large. I think I covered everything.
Yeah, I think it was very well said. I was actually everything I was looking for. I love how you said too that the best, I don't know, I love it, but the best 103 budget you've seen probably since you've been here, I can definitely say yeah. At this time, I think the best I had seen previous was $80,000 in the hole. So
my
So-
first one, it
so
was
this
like
was-
187,000. I really like and that's why our superintendents got really nervous, because at least, and Christine can correct me if I'm wrong, we'd never, even though we had those sponsorship agreements, we never went to our districts and asked them to cover the deficit. We always found a way to make it work in-house. But when we were seeing year over year of extraordinarily high deficit is when our superintendents were starting to get nervous that at some point we're gonna have to ask them to step up to their end of the bargain. Is that correct, Christine? Thankfully, we never had to. We can't hear you.
Your mic's not working, Christine. There you go. For the recording, Christine agrees via 2 thumbs up. And what it does show, though, for the budget committee is that there's pressure on the LPN rate and tuition rate. And it's something that we're going to be looking at is, will the requirements will they be in place next school year as we're setting rates here in the next couple of months? And that's going to be a real conversation that we're having with Michelle and team, and just to figure out, where is the appropriate rate being set, because there's high pressure on that to operate it in a fashion that we are now.
And that tuition rate is a tough one to set because it comes under Title IV, where students can get federal financial aid, but there's a cap on what they can get. And so if we set our rate too high, their financial aid will not cover it 100%, and then we'll either have to take a private loan, a Sallie Mae or something, and we may price ourselves out of students coming in. So it's a delicate balance of trying to figure out where the sweet spot is.
Yeah, and the only thing I'll add too, and I know recently the board has received our updates regarding the CDL program and the advertisements with Casella Waste and also Upstone
Upstone materials.
Materials. And you'll notice that there's also the CDL the CDL program is within the 103 budget as well. It's currently projected to have a positive surplus, but as that need continues to expand, we believe that enrollment's going to draw a lot more attention and a lot more visibility, which is exciting, and generally, it's going to also fill the need. And I know, it's really, and I know, having participated in that recent press conference, with Mrs. Friedman and Assemblyman Jones and Gary Douglas and so on and so forth, talking about the need. So we really are filling a need for the community. And I envision, and I know Mrs. Friedman and I've talked about, and our adult education program as being a way to really continue to reach out to the community and also provide, second career individuals and military transitioning individuals. And so lots of opportunities there, that we're hopeful for growth.
Any questions for, in regards to CV Tech budget reconciliations?
Your growth is phenomenal, Michelle. I was here the year that you had the deficits. We thought we were gonna lose you off the
I had
corner
all
of
the
the
blood
table.
drained out of my body.
I think that was
It's
your
kind of same as you, I felt your pain.
I think that was your first year, if I
Yeah,
recall right.
640 something.
That was like $1 million, right?
I am your
$1 million deficit.
Yeah, last year we were $1 million, so
We
$1
have
million
to, we have
deficit.
to ban you. We have to access your position.
All right, hearing no additional questions, we're gonna move to the, it says ISC, can we call it Instructional Support Services? What do we call this? Still ISC?
Yep.
All right, we'll move to the ISC budget reconciliations of the building that doesn't exist anymore. So we have 20 different coasters, about 20, I think it's 20 coasters, and I'm just briefly looking at 4C. I want to just explain the layout here. So on the left-hand column, we break it down in two sections. The two sections are the same, but the left-hand column gives you the base fees. So that's to participate in the service. Districts have to pay a base fee to be part of that coaster. So where you see those revenues there, you'll see them defined for each coaster. If you see a blank or a 0, that means there is not a base fee to be a participant of that coaster. Next is the projected bill as used. So if there are services within that cooperative service that a district wants, uses, needs, they're billed as used throughout the school year. And those fluctuate based on timing of year in the coaster. Some are heavy at the end of the year, some are heavy at the beginning. But our team is working on a projection there. So realize that's not something that we've actually received to date, but it's what we're projecting for the rest of this school year. And then you have, what does that mean for total projected revenue? It's just the addition of the two. And then we give a projected budget for that coaster. That's our expenses, culminating in a projected in bold surplus or deficit. So Christine's a mastermind behind these budgets and working with Assistant Superintendent Campbell. A couple of things I want to touch on and bring to attention, then I'll ask Assistant Superintendent Campbell to jump in on any items that she'd like to discuss and go over further. So the ones that we point out, I feel like every single year I'm going to point them out again. 505, 506, 610 are really, and there's others, but I'm pointing them out, really dependent on those bill as used services through the rest of this year in our component districts. So looking at instructional printing, what are their needs in the area of instructional printing is going to be the big piece of this. A good example is a lot of work is done around the end of the year, whether it's newsletter or budget votes and so on and so forth. At this point in time, though, we're looking at positive in that area and looking at breaking even. Same thing in 506 school improvement. A lot is dependent upon events, conferences, trainings, support of school districts in their buildings. So we're dependent upon those services that are being provided through the year. And I will say, having the conference center opened up, even though we're living in a pandemic, it's good to see events are happening again, and we're projecting to break even in that coaster. But there is a caveat that Christine and team have entered there for your knowledge. Lastly, 610, I bring this up because this is a coaster in the ISC budget that does not have a base fee to be a participant of. So if you have needs in the school public relations, you can reach out to us and we provide those services at billed at use only. So we set a rate there. So those are 100% dependent upon those services being needed by districts, which puts a great value on the quality of services being provided. Also, we have had a little change in this area, and that's hiring of a communications and publications manager to help lead this cooperative service. This one, as well as others that that person will be overseeing, but in particular this area to ensure that we are providing a high quality school public relations service. We're showing a deficit at this time, but again, it's going to be all dependent upon district needs, and if we're providing high quality public relations, we have a feeling that those will be covered by the end of the year based on the service that we're working on growing and improving. That being said, I'm going to pass it over to Amy.
Okay, so first of all, I'm very grateful and thankful for all the work Christine does for us in her duty as treasurer, but also supporting us in our accounting. And I guess as somebody new with this, the way our budgets work, I'm just very grateful to have her on my team and to be able to have her kind of coaching me through all of this. She does a great job with that. So thank you, Christine. I want to draw your attention to just a couple of things. Instructional printing, although a lot of it still is dependent on what's going to be billed as used as the year goes on, is in a much better place this year than it was last year. Due to the pandemic, a lot of printing services were cut down because everything was being done remotely and digitally, and it was every other day, and there just weren't as many printing. And we've already had more printing jobs coming into this point of this year than we had at this time last year. So we feel pretty confident that that's going to continue to grow and be utilized. 506, I want to draw your attention to that. This is a huge concern for me. I want to be honest about that. We are, since the time I've come on and the various things we're trying to do, not only do we have a pandemic where people are concerned about putting people together in a facility, which impedes in-person programming, we also are in a situation where school districts who would normally send people to these trainings are short-staffed. And on top of short-staffed, they don't have enough substitutes. So when they're looking at, possibility of a teacher getting quarantined or a teacher having a situation, and now I'm going to send somebody out of the building and I'm going to need this substitute and I'm going to need this going on. And then even things that we do for administrators, and people think, oh, an administrator, they can get out of the building, but they can't leave because they've got responsibilities because of COVID, because of other things. They can't be out of the building. So it's really made it difficult to offer in-person events, and that it was the 506 bread and butter. So Sarah and I, who are both new since June and July, are working diligently to come up with alternative methods to offer things so that we can provide a service, get the professional development out there that we want, but do it in a way that doesn't necessarily require people to come to this building for a full day. There are certain things we know people will come for a full day for. So for example, at the end of this week, we have Ed Sarzinski on his retirement tour coming and doing a 504 training for us. That was the person who trained me in 504s. I feel like I'm extremely competent at them because of that. So that's probably one of our biggest events we're going to have for the year so far, because that one people signed up for. But the other thing we've done, though, is we have Math and Movement, which is a very nationally recognized program. It's always been well attended in the area. Instead of doing it in person over the course of a day and bringing in, it's just what it says, math and movement. So people are moving around and in each other's personal space and all of that. We are going to offer it as a 5-day spread out over the fall or over the spring, 1 hour a night after school. So it's outside of the school day. It's virtual. You can do it from your classroom. So your kids leave, you can get on and you get your CTLE, and they also become a network of people in the community that can go to each other for that. So this is one of the things that we're attempting to do to improve our participation in those events. And we're also looking at other asynchronous and opportunities, and we're constantly talking and working with the administration and the superintendents in our component districts to find out what are the things that you need, and so that we can offer those. And then what are the, what other things can we do? So Sarah and I did just go this last Friday. We went out to a district to do some training, and we've done a little bit of that. So that's a little bit more comfortable, having just the two of us or one of us come and present to their whole staff, but not having their staff mixed with staffs from other places. The other big plan that we have for 506, and it won't affect this budget year, but it's something I just want to make you aware of, is we have a goal, given the feedback we've received, to try to run as many training opportunities as possible this summer. If I have my way, this building will have people in and out of it every single day from July 1st until August 31st for training. Some people that have been doing this a long time at ISC say, well, people don't like to come in the summer. Well, but they can't come during the school year. There are not substitutes. They can't get out of the building. They still need the professional training. So that's our goal. We're putting together a whole map and a plan so we can tell people by March, this is what's being offered. We can have districts give us feedback, like, no, that'll work, or no, we wouldn't send anybody to that. So I just want to make you aware, we're not looking at this and saying, oh, well, nothing we can do. It's a pandemic. We have lots of plans for how to grow and to change with the times and to meet that flexible option. School public relations, as Assistant Superintendent Bell said, we just hired our manager. I do believe that that's going, just 2 days of even talking to him, I think that's going to make a huge improvement there. I will point out that we looked at historical use. What you see where it says current district students other, that's how many hours they've officially signed up for. That runs pretty standard. They tend to come in a little bit low, but then increase as the year goes on. So I do think we're going to be closer to that. The other thing is that we've been short-staffed in that department since May, I think, of last year. So when it's a bill as used COSER and you don't have full staffing, that's 30 hours a week plus of potential billable units that you're not charging. So I think we're going to see some growth there. I really do believe that that's going to work out fine by the end. And I just want to call your attention also to grants management. We are working with the districts who purchase that and looking at, they currently purchase it under this concept of a day a week or a half a day a week. And that doesn't really summarize. We ran into a little bit of a problem with that because people are like, well, you only have one person. That one person can't be, maxed out to 8 days a week. There's only 5 days. Also, there were some questions just, but it's work that's getting done. It's consuming. And depending on how much money you're bringing in your grants and how many changes you asked for and how much complication there is to what you do, results in more work on our grant specialists. So we're working to clean up how that is billed and make it cleaner and more understandable and why you're getting charged what you're getting charged.
How about billable hours?
We can't quite do it that way either. It doesn't come that clean because you might be working on something physically, but you also might be doing something that's going to benefit multiple districts. But there is a way to say you use this much. You definitely have more of this. The other piece of that is what we want to do is grow that COSER a little bit by having a base fee that maybe you don't want all of the things that our grants people can do for you. You don't want them to write your grants and do your FS10s and do your budget amendments and do all of that. But you want to be able to pick up the phone and call someone who's available and ask them questions about something you have to do for the state. We can do that for a base fee, and we have the experts. And that's the other thing is in each district, it's not very likely that they have a grants person that only works on grants. They're usually an administrator that's doing some other full job, and that's just a small portion of what they do. Right, Eric?
Yeah.
So when the idea that they could have a specialist who, again, they don't need to buy into the whole COSER, just buy a chunk of it so that then you have that access to that phone call. So that's one of the things that we're trying to do there.
So kind of like a hybrid.
Yeah, so you'd have many options, and some people maybe just want the resource, and other people they don't want anybody on their staff to have to worry about it. The district I came from, I was so grateful to have this service because I just pick up the phone or they would call us and say, this is what you need to do next. Oh, great. Yep. I can figure that out. So it really is, I think this service is going to grow as well. And I just want to make, so right now it looks like this, but part of this too is last spring, there were conversations about changing it. And so right now, this doesn't reflect the new billing that it should, and we're just finalizing all of that, and hopefully by the next time, that'll all be cleaned up. So I think that's, the one positive, if you look under instructional technology, last year we had 5 districts and this year we have 10, and we do believe that will be growing as we move forward. I'm very proud to say that in instructional technology, we offer a very high quality service to our districts. We have gotten a lot of compliments for the people that we send out into the field and the work that they're doing in our component districts and also right here on our own campuses. So.
Thank you. Any questions on our instructional services center reconciliations?
So I just want to kind of echo the points that Mrs. Campbell was referencing. Just in terms of the different budgets, you've got some really ones that have a lot of high profile and visibility. One of the most, recent ones that's really grown compared to last year is that instructional technology. And I know you were just touching on it a little bit, but we've gone from just our own staff and having a staff of approximately 4 to I believe around 10 right now, correct?
Yeah.
To 10, and the districts are thrilled because we're actually providing them a higher level of service than what they were getting before.
At a better
cost, rate.
Yeah.
And there's also the ability to purchase through that COSER as well, to be able to purchase instructional technology. Some districts were purchasing it from other BOCES or NARIC, and there was an extra 10 to 20% surcharge on their expenses. So think of purchasing, $200,000 or $300,000 worth of technology, and then adding another 10 or 20% on top of it. So when you talk about our districts and meeting their needs, they're thrilled. And we just added one instructional technologist who's going, and the district said, "Wow, this is great. You're coming and helping us," and they didn't on a regular basis. So I can't say enough to just acknowledge the work that's happening. And the other one that I'll just hone in on as well, because I know the school improvement, you've talked about the instructional printing, is just interscholastic sports coordination. Last year, to have abbreviated sports schedules and seasons and play football in April and May, and to play a shortened baseball season and shortened seasons, the students were just thrilled to have some experience. This year, we've had a regular sports season so far. Yes, we're mitigating for COVID. They're still moving forward. We actually had one of our local teams, Osable Valley, won the state soccer championship. Mariah's in the final the final championship game for football on Friday night. So the students have had their regular sports seasons, and when you talk about to parents and superintendents, they love the academics, they expect the academics, but sports is where people's passion is. There's just a lot of passion and a lot of energy related to it. And I'm not negating it all, but I'm just saying that's really it's part of the reason why students get really excited about being, in high school and being able to participate. And there's a lot of other activities that are related to it. But I just want to acknowledge that Matt Wallentuck has done a great job. We have our referee coordination. Matt's done a phenomenal job, really hurting and working closely with all the athletic directors to be able to allow the sports seasons to be successful and navigate during the COVID pandemic. So I just want to really acknowledge all the work from all of the participants within the instructional support and instructional services COSERs, but also acknowledge, we have other areas as well. We have our library automation. We have our library services with Suzanne Ford Krogan. We have our repairing of band instruments. We have lots of other things that are really important. We work with our bus drivers. We have the school safety. Jeff Sisson is critical and has been very active in all of the support of our schools, also in our COVID response. So I just want to acknowledge and take my hat off and compliment all of your staff who are involved in that COSER as well. for really taking their services and their work very seriously and working hard to make it a viable service that continues strongly. So thank you.
I had a couple little weird questions just pop into my head. Back in the day, we ran a program through BOCES that basically answered, how do I become a teacher's aide? How do I become a substitute? And it was at that time, back in the day, a half-day program. And the candidates would come in and we got to see, I went through it, so I know. We got to see the paperwork. We got to actually visit the classrooms, and the last hour of the day, we actually were in the classrooms with just the teacher, which blessed their souls. Because of course, substitutes, new faces, we're gonna play. So they played, but it was very interesting. And at that time, I think there was maybe 10 or 15 in the group that I went through with. And I think we kept 8 on the lists, which, I don't know what the requirements are anymore, but is it a possibility to run something like that again?
I think the biggest hurdle to that is now there's fingerprinting clearances for it to be working, right? And so when we have student teachers and them in, they're covered by the colleges that they come
Right.
through. But to just bring people in who maybe aren't in a program or whatever and have them in classrooms, I think there'd be a little bit of, I don't know that we could do that. But I will say that on our list, Sarah and I have this list of things that we think are needed and we should do. We have a substitute training day, and we hadn't really put 8 on there, but that concept of maybe especially substitutes, like that you would, all the schools could send their substitutes to here for a day, and we would give them a toolkit to leave with of how to survive as a substitute teacher.
I can't help anybody. I don't know what it takes to be a substitute teacher anymore. I know I could go to South Carolina and become one tomorrow.
You can become one here if you want.
I don't know about that. The other thing I had was on when the training reopens, I know that all of this thing is on hold because of COVID.
Well, we're doing what we can. I mean,
Yeah.
It's not like we're not having anything.
That's
It's
true.
just that we feel very limited in what
We're
we
not
can do.
static,
We're not
which is
sta-
good.
yeah.
All that training, when it reopens, one of my big things, Dr. Davey knows, is that when the training is opened, and especially in the summer, is that going to be open to not just teachers, but the aides and the substitutes also?
When we offer something, we'll take anyone who a district is willing to pay to come here to take. So, as far as, I don't know, actually, those are things I'm still learning. Like if somebody called for one thing, but then we didn't run it, if you're not affiliated with a district, but you want to come to something here, what does that look like? Because some of our costs are, I don't know that an individual could pay them.
I was thinking of something through the adult work program, if something could be rigged up through there. You guys are all good at rigging.
Well, I appreciate you making the suggestions. It gives us things to think about.
Okay.
Yeah, and I just want to acknowledge one other ISC or instructional support coaster, and that is the emergency communications. Think of your bus communications and all the transportation. And it's kind of one of those silent coasters where when it operates well and the buses all communicate effectively, you don't really pay attention to it, but it's really critical to the infrastructure of transporting all of our students. Not only does it include all of our schools, but it also includes a number of the FEH BOCES schools as well. We've got multiple communication towers, Whiteface, Moncton, I believe Rand Hill. So, and over in Malone, and we're on the 911 towers and so on and so forth. So it's a really complex, well-run coaster. I know Mr. St. Pierre helps with that, as well as Mr. Sisson, and Bob Joyce had really helped guide that for many years, and he recently retired. But I just want to acknowledge the important service that provides to all of our school districts, especially if there were ever, true emergencies, and even we didn't have phones or Wi-Fi, we could have communication through our buses, which I think is really critical. So, thank you.
Any other ISC questions? All right. Next item up on our agenda is the administrative and management services budget. So jumping into your attachment 4D, the admin budget currently is projected as surplus of $68,000. So same model as the IC budgets. I did skip to show that we do have below it budget districts, current districts. So thank you, Amy, for pointing that out. Admin budget projected to be a surplus currently. Capital, I'm going to put on hold for conversation at the end. The one I want to point out here is our labor relations service running in a deficit. We budgeted for 9 districts to be part of this cooperative service to break even. We're at 6. We've been in discussion with multiple districts about joining our COSER. We knew going into this it'd be a multi-year approach to building the 620 COSER. Also, I want to add that we've built into our expense budget mentoring with Halls Palmer as part of this budget. So going into this, we knew it'd be a multi-year process. We actually had left a manager services position vacant to help support and cover this COSER. So in collaboration with Dr. Davey, we've made that choice going into this year. So this COSER could help manager services survive through this year in order to have a revenue to help support a deficit in this COSER as we work to build it to grow. Also, I want to point out we've been in discussions with neighboring BOCES and their leadership on potential some of their districts joining the COSER as well. Our 642 cafeteria school food management COSER, we are currently at 6 districts this school year. After the budget season was over, we added Plattsburgh City School District, and today we were in with Mariah interviewing with Superintendent Laro for school lunch managers that service the Mariah Central School District. So we're up to 6 districts in that COSER as we continue to grow and expand and support our district's needs. Lastly, I'll now circle back to the capital budget. So our 002 capital budget, that does include lease costs. So it's not all just capital project budgets. Formerly in there was our ISC lease costs, so part of the year is ISC. It also is classroom lease costs. So we currently lease classroom from Bocat Valley in our CV Tech programming for our New Visions Medical in the South. That does flow through that budget. So always keep that in your mind as we are looking at recons there. But at the end, $448,000 left in our annual capital appropriations that are available for phase 2. We've been discussing phase 2 planning. On the bottom of your page, far right, you see 4.9 projected currently for remaining capital project funds. That's our voter approved capital project, 29.85 million. We've been talking about pairing our annual appropriations for capital with that money so we can do even more work. We know we have the need. So now we're putting numbers to paper. You see the 448 left over this year. So that's our 21-22 002 budget. We also have remaining funds in our other 2 mini capital projects. Our fire alarm has just over $28,000, and our infrastructure project has $115,000 remaining in it. So when you pair all those together, you start to approach close to $600,000 in additional capital funds available from the 21-22 budget. And then if we tie in the next year and the year after, we're approaching 1.5 million above and beyond what our voter approved capital project has to meet the needs of our facilities. So that'll be a continued approach. Looking at when we set our capital budget and annual appropriations, we're going to want to maintain that budget flat. It's at 474,856. If we maintain it flat, it has 0 impact on our component district's tax cap. So we'll be looking at that and I would assume making that recommendation to the board. Again, that'll be Dr. Davies' decision, but looking to keep our 002 budget flat and then impacting as much as we can of our facilities going forward. Any questions on the management services / admin budget?
I'll just weigh in one more time and say that in the support of our districts, the health insurance consortium, the changes and improvements with our health insurance director, consortium director, Vicky Giroux has been phenomenal. The benefits coordination team has really provided a much higher level of service. We recently acknowledged that there was a $1.5 million savings to the Health Insurance Consortium that was recognized by the work of our benefits team. So as you move forward and you look at the other areas, I know our personnel recruiting, the districts participate in that. Labor relations, I know Mr. Coakley is continuing to have conversations, as you mentioned, and that service we anticipate to continue to grow. Food service management, we've had multiple districts that have been having conversations with us and are continuing to do so. So those are again all positive support services. Part of our work is to support our districts, and that's an important critical part because by supporting our districts, we're able to maintain a high level of service to them. So thank you, Mr. Bell, for your leadership with that and our team.
Absolutely.
My experience with labor relations is that when we first started the program last time, it got off to a slow start, and it went through a number of contract negotiation timeframes. And of course, depends on which side of the table you sit on. If the boards felt successful in getting what they wanted during the negotiations, it seemed like our number of participants rose because they could see us as, helping them go along with it. And the food management, I've heard a lot of good things about that because the kids were tired of the open the plastic bag, dump it on the tray, and that was your meal. They do away with that. And I know there's been resistance out there to some of it sometime because there's a lot of participants and people who work in the kitchens that is their stove, their pot, their ladle. You are not going to touch it under any conditions. They've been doing it this way 30 years. No way. So, and I've heard great things that, they wish there were more of your people. I go, I wish there were too. Help us pay for them.
Thank you
So,
very much for that feedback.
yeah. Very good. I have good things to report to my board.
As I move away from budgets, I want to ask Christine, is there anything else that you want to add? I don't know if your mic's working. I kind of haven't given you the opportunity to chime in as you have your fingertips on every one of these budgets. No, but you can keep saying, can you hear me now? I've read your lips.
Mrs. Myers, I did unmute you if you want to add anything. No?
I don't think that's the problem. I think it's her
Oh.
I think something like she didn't connect and it's not. If you want to put anything in the chat, Christine, I can read it out to the group.
It's all right. We need a course in ASL now.
All right, so if chat comes in, Amy, you'll share that with us. Next item 4E, surplus. So this gave a little historical view, the last 3 years of surplus going back to our districts by district, as well as a culminating total. So you can see last year was just under $200,000. The year before 1920, we always preface that with saying that we take great pride in the amount of money we saved for our component districts from March of 2020 to June 30th of 2020. At time of budget discussions and reconciliations, we were looking at a surplus, and we told districts a surplus about $250,000 for 1920. The day we closed, we shut everything down. We did not fill a single position, and we maintained through the end of the year with the unknowns and uncertainties, and that's what drove us saving over $1 million in a very short period of time. So that will forever, in my mind, be an anomaly. So we were projecting 300 that year, and then the year prior we had 711,000. So as we talk about anticipated results moving forward, we did share with you some very good into this committee, veteran committee that we have here. These were some of the better reconciliations that we've seen in recent years. To the tune of a quick estimate of about 1.5 million in surplus at this point in time. Both directors did speak to the needs that they have to meet the needs of our students, which entails hiring staff as well as buying equipment. So obviously that surplus will go down. Also, I bring to the board's attention the ongoing discussion of funding our TRS reserve. We've done it 3 years in a row. It takes 5 years to fully fund that TRS reserve. This would be year 4. That comes directly out of that surplus amount. That amount is $200,000 annually. So we would anticipate that recommendation coming to the board for consideration this year as well. And then lastly, in our reserve plan, I believe we have a goal of funding our employee benefit accrued liability reserve, which covers our costs of sick leave payouts at time of separation or a vacation payout at time of separation. For our employees, majority of that's at retirement. Our goal was to fund that at $400,000 for this year. So that is $600,000 in reserve funding, which is again an aspiration per our reserve plan that was shared with the board at the September board meeting. So that all would be coming out of the surplus. So in all reality, in a realistic number, we're more around that $300,000 to $500,000 in surplus, which is kind of where we target on an annual basis. If you compare the last 2 years, a normal 1920, where we were actually projecting as of March 1st of 2020 and looking forward. Anything else you want to add to that, Dr. Davy? I know we have this discussion quite often.
Right. No, and I think the board has been really, proactive in funding those reserves and, to maintain our stability and our fiscal, forward thinking. I know that over the years, we have tapped our reserves at several times. I know we did when there was a deficit with CV Tech, and initially many years ago when there was a deficit with special ed, we tapped our reserves. So the board has been willing to make some short-term adjustments to be able to, really keep the significant increases, addressed, but also then to be able to supplement and support those reserves when we're able to. So I thank the board for your fiscal leadership as well, and working with us to maintain them.
You need to do what needs to be done.
Yeah.
Which leads me to a question that the feds are trying to push for 4 weeks of paid leave. I'm not sure if it was in the last bill or in this one that they're fighting over right now, but one of them has 4 weeks of paid leave for all employees. We probably haven't heard anything yet from the state.
We have not, that I'm aware of, Mr. Bell.
No, I have not.
Okay, well, I'll keep my ear at the federal level. You guys keep me, yeah, I'm just kind of looking forward that very possible another reserve in our future, which is okay. I'm all for that. Since we don't have poor Michelle having to buy secondhand drills anymore. I
From
remember
our
that.
garages and our neighbors. Borrowing, I should say.
We're gonna do a shift. Did we have a comment in the chat for budget recons? No, just team's awesome. Is that what she said?
Team is awesome.
So moving to 5, budget development factors and goals. The first item up is budget development guidelines and parameters, and I'll pass it to Dr. Davy. But now's the time really to hear feedback from our budget committee members, your expectations for budget development guidelines, any parameters that you want to set around this budget development process. This is really that point in discussion to have and put on the table, because from today through January 25th, we are going to have the in-depth budgeting process with every single one of the coasters we just went over in order to set rates for each of those coasters. So with that being said, I will pass it to Dr. Davy and then open it up to the committee.
Okay, so as we look at, and I'll be brief, but as we look at the 22-23 budget development guidelines and parameters, I know that we have an established budget process that we use to develop our budgets, and the reconciliation is a big first step. We generally look at our budget and then look at realistic adjustments as we move forward, and also work to keep our budgets as conservative as possible while still maintaining, high quality support for our districts. I will share a few updates in terms of even my conversations happening at the state level, especially coming from a district superintendent's meeting the last 2 days, and even meeting with the executive director for rural schools as well as NISPA and their deputy director and their governmental relations. As we look at the outlook forthcoming, the state is in a unique position. Most often, we've always talked about, and I know Mrs. Saunders you're familiar as well. Traditionally, the state budget was always, and Mrs. Boyce especially as well, was the state always projected a deficit.
At this time of year, anywhere from 44 to
Yes.
144.
Right, so there was always that threat hanging over our heads. The conversation that we're having right now is that with the stimulus monies, the state budget is essentially balanced. And they're anticipating that those stimulus monies will continue for the next 3 to 4 years to be able to, and then eventually there's going to be a cliff. With that being said, there's the major goal for our school districts especially is the full phase-in of foundation aid. This year, that totals approximately $1.5 billion. And that money is the legislature has promised that. They've actually put it in legislation and they've actually endorsed that that's their plan. So that's what's expected. And I will share with you that in many cases, our rural districts are being what's called hold harmless. So they're not seeing huge increases, but they're not seeing decreases because their enrollment is based on numbers from the past. There is the request that NISBA especially is advocating that all the districts get at least 3% of an increase for state aid. What that would mean in terms of the education budget is about $60 million. So it's not a lot, but many of our districts didn't see huge increases with that foundation aid because they were actually fairly close to being fully funded.
It's a great point, Dr. Day, because we have 12 of our districts who are at that due minimum level. 4 of them are underfunded. So 4 of them are looking at the perceived soon-to-be windfall of fully funding foundation aid. That is a small minority of our districts. The majority are looking at being at hold harmless and only receiving due minimum increases, which we have seen in the past be 0.25%. So a 3 number, music to my ears, and that is way higher than anything we've seen in recent years.
Right.
But something that our districts who are on hold harmless, or 12 of our 16 districts, definitely need.
Right.
Yeah, well said.
And a few other points as well, and I know both NISBA and Hinman Straub and rural schools are all advocating, this will be music to Mrs. Friedman's ears, to supporting the CTE salary cap increase. The current rate of $30,000 was set in 1993.
I'm gonna say forever, same
It's
as
been
our.
1993.
Other procedures.
I think, Mr. Bell, you've shared in one of our conversations, the typical average of a CT salary now is like $65,000 or $67,000. So there is an acknowledgement that really needs to be increased. There is a significant budget tied to that increase though, and this was actually suggesting that it be phased in over several years. Just because the state's gonna have to come up with quite a bit of money. And I know ASBO has actually figured that out. I'll have to gather that from you because I don't recall it.
Our BOCES business officials came together, all 37 of our BOCES came together, did the analysis for New York State at the request of the DSs and submitted that to them so they knew exactly what our exempt CTE salaries were and what that impact would be if they did increase it. So the state has all the information in their hands thanks to the BOCES business officials across the state.
Yeah, and so I would just acknowledge as well, that as we go forward, and I'm looking at some of my notes, that over a 3-year period, the amount of increase that the schools will eventually receive, I mentioned 1.5 billion this year. The total over the next 3 years would be 4.5 billion in total. So that's a significant increase to fully fund the foundation aid. And if districts are able to do that, I know the state did come through and raise income taxes. So it's not just a negative, it's actually, they've come up with ways to help fund that as well. So really, as we've talked about, both with rural schools, with Hinman Straub at my DS meeting and with NISBA, they said really it's a matter of priorities. And the state has said education matters and it's a priority and we need to fund our educational system. And there's also the campaign for fiscal equity where districts where, the big 5 and our school districts have said you're not providing equity and access to all students. So by fully funding the foundation aid, that will, essentially meet those conditions and the lawsuit essentially will be met. So those are some of the major things that are happening as well. And I think it's important as we look to the future, our inflation rate is up. I think the other piece that NISBA and rural schools and they're all looking at is the idea of hoping that there can be changes on the tax cap. I know that it was 2% or the CPI, whichever is less. And the inflation rate has been actually higher this year. So we could actually be looking at a 2% increase this year as a potential, in terms of that tax cap. But there is hope that there will be some adjustment down the road as well in legislation. So those are the major things that are looking in terms of the budget outlook and the stimulus monies. And our districts are going to really need to work hard to plan for those stimulus monies to eventually stop. We're looking at stimulus monies for the next 3 years. And once that money comes to a close, we want to avoid a financial cliff. I know many of us, I know Mrs. Campbell and Mr. Bell and myself will be at a statewide school finance consortium, PD, a professional development session next Monday, where Rick Timms, who's a statewide expert and recognized as being a leader in school finance, where he'll be talking about that as well as the outlook for our districts and our budget. So more to come. And it does have a roundabout effect, especially because if our districts are in a good financial position, they're able to support our BOCES programs. They're able to send more students to CTE. They're able to support our special ed services. They're able to support our instructional services and participate in our management services coasters. So there is a support, although we don't receive the stimulus monies, we are supported in a roundabout way by our districts. So any questions, Mrs. Giro or Mrs. Boyce or Mrs. Saunders?
No, I think I got all mine asked.
Okay.
I just have a question, with the stimulus money that is going to be coming through over the next few years, how will that impact the issue with, and Eric, maybe you can, Mr. Bell, talk about the staffing issues that are occurring, trying to fill positions, and will any of this money be allowed to be used to be allocated to help support, getting the appropriate staffing levels that are going to be needed, or retaining staff in positions because of salary issues?
Yeah, we missed the first part of your question, it cut out. But the second part of your question directed towards me, yes, districts actually are already using that stimulus money this year to impact staffing, and they're getting creative in various ways. Some are even using it for recruitment efforts to fulfill staffing needs within their district. The biggest item is that every district has to have a plan for anyone they hire with these funds of what are you going to do when those funds end. So when they end in a couple of years, you have to have a plan to either roll them into your budget or support them in support that cost in some other way, because they want you to have a sustainability plan for anything that's added new to your organization.
Right. And Mrs. Giro, our BOCES and BOCES across the state do not receive any stimulus monies.
Right, I understand that.
Yeah, so it's just it's the component districts that have received these increases in aid and support, and that's what they've been working to support those new positions and also have a plan for as Mr. Bell indicated, for the future. And the typical line in grants management and applying to even our stimulus is that they can't supplant money. In other words, they can't just use the stimulus monies, they can support it, but they can't supplant it. Just take the stimulus monies and replace it with general fund monies, and pay for it out of the grants. That's something that they're not allowed to do. They can move it around, and many districts do that, they get creative. However, as Mr. Bell indicated, the long-term plan is they've got to be prepared for what happens when that money is no longer there.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I was just gonna share it as part of our strategic plan, and a part of ISC is to kind of support them in that and making sure that as they're doing things, are there things that we can do as the BOCES, as that money does fade away, to provide cooperative services that are partially aidable to try to help maintain those programs.
Right.
I wasn't sure if it's appropriate.
No, that is a great point. And,
That's nice to know.
yeah, Mrs. Gerald, did you hear Mrs. Campbell? Okay, great.
I love those mics. No matter how loud you talk, they can hear you clearly. The other, so Dr. Davey, you just covered A, B, and E very well, and thank you for that. Budget development guidelines parameters, just want to give the budget committee one last chance. Is there any expectations going into this budget? We usually give you that opportunity to say if there's anything that you want the district superintendent to know as he's overseeing this whole budget process over the next 2 months. We always want to give the budget committee an option at that time, at this time.
No, not really. I've always found the administration, Christine, to be more than amazing and helpful to the component districts about what we're doing. People like me, you know, we go out back to our boards and we don't remember every little detail. You people live it. But it's nice to know that when we throw something out there, when their people have a question, we instantly refer to you. There's no hesitation. So have you checked with this person yet? No, well then you need to check there. Cause I can't do it. So I have nothing more to tell you. I don't want to know where every single penny goes. That would drive me insane. That's your job. You know, I just like to see the development. I've been here a little bit now. The development that has happened. It's just blooming amazing. Just amazing. Like I said, poor Michelle gets it with the used drills. Remember that discussion? You know, we don't have to do that anymore. You know, count little trampolines for the special ed kids, going out every year and counting how many talking iPads do we have, how many, you know, interconnecting. I don't remember the words now. And then me bugging poor Christine every week about what was going on. Where could she explain something to me? I haven't been to see you in a while. I must be getting better at it. You're a good teacher. Thank you. So I think you all done an amazing job, from you, Dr. Davey, right on down to
Thank you.
your typists and your people who have to read these numbers.
Thank you for that feedback.
So, Mr. Bell, the only a couple of items that you have on the list, and I'll just draw attention to for our board. One of the handouts that you have is the Health Insurance Consortium. Is that next?
It's coming up next.
Okay,
Yeah, just
Yeah,
want to make
because-
sure we got the parameters before I went through it all.
okay.
Good, all right. So we left the health insurance in here, we left the TRS and ERS information in here. That is duplicate of what you received last time. So we put that in there because we're gonna actually dive into what does it mean in our budget, in case you want to reference it again. So we want to include that to the board, so we know we're being repetitive, duplicative, but we want to bring that to your attention again. Did you have something you want to add on health insurance? Okay.
No, just primarily that, you know, we've continued to monitor, especially with our benefits coordination office. And, you know, the unrestricted fund balance and the balance of the Health Insurance Consortium continues to be positive. Even recently, with the new state of emergency, you may have seen that there has been, and I know Ms. Giro, you may have seen some of that information as well, that there was a request to start limiting, you know, surgeries that were not required. So that's starting to happen again because of the concern about the Omicron variant for COVID. So I know that could as well have some impact on our health insurance consortium as well, because surgery that's elective may be put off. So I know that that's something that'll definitely be taken into consideration as we look at our rates and our budget planning for the upcoming year.
Well said. Moving to 5D, page 3 is the Workers' Compensation Consortium. Our chairperson of the consortium, Dr. Davey, brought this up last meeting. We didn't have the financial report in your packet yet, but he had shared with the board committee. The reserves were growing in a strong position. So we want to share this with the budget committee just so you could see what Dr. Davey was referencing at our last meeting. Our case reserves and our IBNR Those are at just over $4 million, as well as having an ending balance of unrestricted net assets of 1.1 million. So if you were to look at where we were when we had ended the 18-19 year, we were in a deficit position. So that's not on your sheet, but we were in a deficit position just a couple of years ago. So really strong financial position, strong growth over the last 2 years. Those 2 years, Dr. Davey has been the chairperson of this consortium. But we want to share that with the group just so you can see the financial health that Dr. Davey was mentioning. Now we're going to jump into what does that mean to CVES? That's what 5D page 4 is really getting into the weeds of. We gave you some general numbers last meeting. Christine's actually put it into formulas with our salaries to show you what it means. So looking at our teachers' retirement system, if we were to budget the 10.5% for 22-23, you will see a $52,000 increase on our budget. So that's with no other changes. That gets spread out amongst all of our instructional, any coaster that has instructional salaries incorporated with it would be impacted. Our employee retirement system, which we had shared last time, was dropping significantly. As we look at it, there is a blended rate that is shared with us. I believe it was 11.6%. That when you look at our makeup, in our tier 4 and tier 3 employees, it's really tier 4, are the majority of our employees. So over 50% of our staff are in tier 4 of our ERS. That rate as projected by them is 13.1%. So you take a look at our group as a whole. Christine and I work together. We're doing a projection of a blended rate of 13%, which is a reduction of 2.5% on our budget, or a reduction of $150,000, which again will impact any budget with staff in it that are non-certified staff in the employee retirement system. Workers' compensation, we're looking at an increase there. Good financial position. On average, we increase premiums between 5 and 6% because we've been trending well. We're projecting that increase of a 10% increase. What we've seen is the last 2 years, CVS has received a 10% increase on workers' compensation because the premium is distributed based on your actual claims and your payroll data. It's 50% of what your claims are and 50% of what your payroll data is. So therefore, CVES has been catching up on premiums and at the high end of the range. So it ranges from 0% to 10% on a typical year. Again, that's all set by the board and through the rate setting process. So we're assuming worst case scenario at 10% in workers' comp. Very little money, $16,485. Sorry for spending so much time in discussion there. It's one that Christine and I enjoy that discussion, but probably nobody else does. Health insurance is more of an important one. We said we're in a good financial place with health insurance. On trend, health insurance costs increase 8% year over year. That's at least what our consultants from Siegel Consulting tell us, as well as Empire. So in a typical year, our health insurance premium should increase 8%. We have shared with you that our financial position in the consortium is a strong one. Our current budget is tracking under budget, so our actual costs are below where budget is at. So we are beating trend currently. So as we start to develop this, what are the health insurance costs going to be? We pick a point in time right now. We picked an increase of 5%. That's beating trend by 3%. Are we saying that it's going to be 5%? No, we are not saying that, but we want to put in there where we believe again, worst case as of today. So like Dr. David said, we're in the middle of a pandemic with other variables that are out there. This could take a turn for the worse, but we want to put it out there that this is worst case based on all the information we know as of today. We would expect it to be better than a 5% increase. Also here, you're given a breakdown of where our plans are at. Your plan 1 plans, majority of those individuals have now progressed to Medicare. It's a great sign. That's a Medicare primary plan, I should clarify. Those are lower cost plans. You can see it's $10,868. That is seeing the benefits of CVS staff moving years ago, one of the early adopters to a plan 2. So it's just retirees on plan 1, and they're starting to age into that 65 and older Medicare primary plan, which are the lower cost plans, lower cost of the consortium, lower for CVS as well. Net impact of a 5% increase is about $430,000 on the budgets across our organization. Again, preliminary numbers as we progress and work with our consortium board, which is Dr. Davies, and then our advisory committee, which I have the pleasure of sitting on. We'll have better ideas as we set budgets, but for right now, we're going to start with a 5% increase on health insurance. Questions on fringe benefits? I know I said a lot there. We're diving into a little detail. Some of these are early projections. Questions, thoughts, concerns? The last item for 5 budget development factors is our WADA. So our next page, 5E label at the bottom right-hand corner is the Arwada change. We come to you today with another projection or not a projection, this is actual based on what districts have reported on their SAMS reports that were due September 1st. Do we know, did all districts get those in? Usually you get an update. I don't think we heard anybody didn't get them in.
I don't believe that I recall that.
So there could be minor changes in this, but we haven't heard from SED that any of our districts are delinquent or in error, which at this point in time of the year is a good sign. There is a drop in our WADA of 252 students across all of our districts. The important piece of this is our WADA is built out in some of our coasters, and the rate methodology of our coasters, whether it's a base fee or another model, the big item is our admin budget. So when you look at our admin and capital budget, that is built out through our WADA. So a change in the our WADA for a district impacts the amount of costs that they pick up. So that's what the far right-hand column that Christine's put together for us calculates the change in their percent of budgeted CVES costs. So if we held our budget flat, districts such as Saranac and Ticonderoga would still see a 0.22% increase share of our budgeted costs. So they're going to see an increase even if we had our budgets totally flat. Now, remember that as part of our admin budget, we have a retiree health insurance cost. So I don't foresee or predict a time where our retiree health insurance costs would be flat unless our consortium held premiums flat, which we're not projecting at this time. So where you see districts who are increasing during a time of decreasing, we talked about this a little bit last year, but it's exponential impact on their overall share of the CVS BOCES budget. Again, out of our control, but it's a factor that we try to be transparent and have early conversations with our superintendents, with our business officials to give them a heads up. We're coming to budget season without us doing anything. You're already picking up a greater share or a smaller share of the CVS budget.
Is that a larger than anticipated drop in overall enrollment for the region? I mean, I know we have the BEDS data, the SAMS data from K-12 every October 1st. I can't remember the grid from last year. It's usually kind of,
It's been,
kids just move around, they just shifted, like Peru got a slack with a higher increase, but is this a larger than expected
it's been
decrease?
fluctuating over the last few years between 13 and 14,000. So 13.5 is about the standard. So last year we started to go up again to closer to 14,000. I know 13,951. I don't know, and we'll have to look. And one of the things I'd like to ask you to look with me, Mr. Bell, is look at the live birth data for the last couple of years, because people have been spending a lot more time at home. And just wondering if there's.
We have to wait 5 years.
Yeah, to see if there's a 5-year increase
Four now.
over time. So we're approaching 3.
Look
Does this
at
reflect where we
Northeastern.
are right now or last year?
So this is, remember, this is resident weighted average daily attendance. So this is not enrollment.
Okay.
So sometimes this gets equated to
Right.
what is the enrollment of component districts? These are two different things. So if you really wanted to look at where those at, what you had referenced, which was the BEDS data, that would give you your enrollment data.
Okay, so that's what I'm thinking this number
Yeah,
was. and
Yeah,
I'm
so I think a
thinking of
good
that.
comparison of where our district's at student-wise, and kind of where, like Dr. Davies mentioning too, is if you compare BEDS data year to year to year. We'll give you the enrollment.
We can pull that data and provide it to the board as well, just so that when we look at this,
Be
to see
interesting.
where we are
Yeah.
and what the projections are
These
as well.
students are all weighted differently. Yeah, it can be weighted differently, and it ties to their attendance. I believe last year we had a decrease of 75. Christine was flipping through a folder. Did you have last year's numbers, Christine, in front of you? I don't have my laptop out, but I think we had a decrease of 75 last year. If we're looking at trend
Overall, right?
overall,
Is 252 larger than typical?
it's larger than last year, I guess. As far as looking at typical, I don't know that I've seen it that high.
Can I ask a question? So this is really though, this is based on 2021, right? We're not dealing with, because it wouldn't be this year.
Correct.
So I just want to point out, from having been in district, I can tell you our enrollment went down 2 things. Parents not sending kindergartners to school if they didn't have to,
Oh,
because they
yeah.
weren't gonna send kindergartners for remote learning. And our homeschool, our parents who chose to homeschool last year doubled
Okay.
in the
makes
district I
sense.
was in 1 year.
Nope.
So that's gonna impact, that alone is gonna impact this.
Well said, Amy. Yeah, because this is your full COVID year,
Full
2021.
year.
So those numbers are based on their 2021 resident weighted average daily attendance. Well said. All right, I think Christine's searching,
Then
but
we'll
if it's
see
not
a
in the
big
chat,
bounce
Christine, it's
back in
okay.
2 years.
I think
Um,
we will.
Yeah.
That completes our budget development factors and goals. Questions from the committee, anything else to add? Excellent. I know we put a lot out there. We give you a lot of information. If questions come up, reach out to Dr. Davey. We're happy to answer them in between meetings. Our team now has some work to do. The heavy lifting continues. I think budget recon was a very heavy lift, and I'm proud of the team that I'm sitting with here today, as well as our managed services team that worked alongside everybody. Now we have a heavy lift in setting these budgets, projecting for next year, and doing our best to be as fiscally responsible for our component districts as we possibly can, while also considering our financial position as a BOCES over the next 4 or 5 years, and thinking long-term and planning. So we look forward to bringing you some budgets that Dr. Davey is going to be making a recommendation to this budget committee, and then we can transition from this meeting to Dr. Davey making a recommendation at the February board meeting.
And I have to acknowledge the work of our team, not only the accountants, but to our board members, just acknowledge the work of, Mr. Bell, Mrs. Myers, Mrs. Campbell, Mrs. Friedman, Mr. Slattery. You've taken a proactive leadership role in working with your budgets, working with the accountants. You've kept a finger on the pulse of the finances, more so, and it's a lot easier when there's more positive news and that we're moving in the right direction. But still, you've been proactive, you've thought creatively, you've worked with your administrators, you've worked with your team to really be, as proactive as possible and work hard to put this together, but also to really provide, a strong update to the board. So Mrs. Myers, thank you to your team as well. Great job. And thank you to all of your accountants who are working behind the scenes to help put this together and work with our directors and our senior administrators. Very much appreciated. I want the board to know how much, labor, and it's a labor of love for our leaders, but it's also an important way to help lead our organization and have it on a solid footing. So I'm proud to be part of to help lead this team and really acknowledge the work that's occurred. So thank you.
It's a labor of love for chocolate.
I could have brought you some chocolate, I'm sorry. I should have.
I had to
know.
take, I
I
had
meant
to
to bring
take.
my.
Next meeting will.
I meant to bring my little container.
We have to get into the
Amazing
Lindors.
chocolate. So I know I'd like to just ask Mrs. Boyce, Mrs. Giro, and Mrs. Saunders, any questions or comments or any feedback you'd like to share? Thank you for being good attendees and listening and asking questions, but anything you'd like to add or ask questions before we close out?
I'll just add a little something, and I just want to say thank you to everyone that's a part of all of these committees. We all know as we move forward and coming out of such an incredibly challenging time and moving forward into the future, that there's always a stumbling block here, there, and everywhere, but you guys have done an incredible job really putting the education piece first for all of the students and all of the component school districts but just an incredible team within BOCES itself, and really putting forth the best that you possibly can to help everyone, and our own staff at BOCES too, to ensure that everybody is well taken care of. I mean, I think you all deserve a great kudos, and I'm sorry, but my camera seems to be a little bit of sleepy poo. I think it's sleeping. It's not working. So at least my microphone's working. So, well, you and I can go together, Christine. But I truly do appreciate all the hard work that is put forth by everyone, because we know that this is a very difficult time, but a very challenging time, but also a very rewarding time. And I think we are very, very thankful and grateful for everyone that's a part of this team here. So thank you.
You want to mention Christine did put something in the chat when you were talking about Rwanda, and then it decreased 96 from 1819 to 1920.
So it's off a little bit.
Are there
Thank you,
any
Christine.
wish lists out there?
Pardon?
Are there any wish lists out there? I'm getting recall, Michelle, recall. Remember when we wanted a 3D printer?
Oh, we have a lot of them now.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I can remember you and me going like this for one.
Over the last 5 years, we've really been diligent about the equipment priority acquisition. Last year with the sale of PAI, we were able to reintroduce about $760,000 worth of priority 1, 2, and 3 equipment. So now we're back to the point where we can look at our 1 through 5s and keep ourselves current and not get into a situation where we're replacing 20, 30-year-old equipment. So there's always wish lists because everything is evolving. But we are at a place now where we can hopefully continue to keep things up to date and current and not get behind. Yes, there's wish lists. They're coming in all the time. But we've also been, very lucky to have gotten some additional funding through Billy Jones and other funding streams. Just have positioned ourselves to be ready when the time came to move it forward. So we're healthy.
Yeah, the interesting thing too our teams do is we build in our budget certain items that we know we need to purchase, but we hold. So like both division held on certain purchases of equipment, some materials and supplies pending budget reconciliations. So those all started to flow. Yeah. So when the budget reconciliations were done and came in, which was in recent weeks, those equipment pre-approvals, those material and supplies requests, those position requisitions start to flow into Dr. Davies. So it's almost like, all right, this was in our budget, but we need protection, right? Because we got to make sure that we're not laying somebody off mid-year or have to do something drastic. So let's wait till we see where we're at financially in all our divisions, and then the trigger goes off. So that wish list, I guess, is part of the budget list, but it gets put on hold. And that's where
December 1st, which is tomorrow. That's why I'm just waiting for that.
Well, it's not too far from midnight, so it should
And I can't tell them we don't have money anymore because we just presented it.
But we're still good stewards of it.
No, absolutely.
Okay, well, I know that. But it's things like, I guess, see, we didn't have you then either, is finding out that we had students who did not have the communication devices, but they wanted to get us board members laptops. That was a very warm meeting. That was a very hot meeting because we had just found out, and it was just like, I think Roxanne Pombrio was the director of special ed then, and it was just, and that sticks with a board person like me, is there something you need that you might want us to be aware of so that we can put pressure if we need to, which we don't. Usually we just say, gee, it sure would be nice, and you guys perform. And it's great. It's just so much easier. But I agree with Lisa. I mean, you guys are amazing. So.
Sure.
Yeah, thank you. Ms. Gero, any closing comments or questions or updates?
Does she want me to unmute her?
Yeah, why don't you do that?
Oh, all it does is request, it sends a request to her.
Yeah, she's muted.
It won't let me unmute her.
Take your power away, Amy.
I don't understand. I'm the host.
Pat,
I
you're
shouldn't be able to
muted.
do whatever I
We
want.
can't hear you.
I think something switched with Webex. That doesn't let you do it anymore.
Lisa
Well,
has
I-
sent.
There we
There
go.
you are.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate that I concur with everybody's comments. All of you have done a tremendous job, and congratulations to all of you. I'm very proud to go to the board meeting and support it, the budget presentation there. So thank you very much for all of your hard work.
Yes, thank you.
Excellent.
All right. Well, thank you. And just a reminder to our board members, we have our holiday dinner coming up. So, and to our cabinet as well. We look forward to that. It's always a true celebration. We are looking at, and I've talked to Mr. St. Pierre about, because of COVID, Chef Bevan has asked that we try to be a little bit more limiting in terms of our numbers this year and not have as big a crowd. And we've also talked, because of the Webex and the hybrid option, about having everyone come back here, because we will still have a hybrid meeting. So after the dinner, we would then relocate back to the satellite campus for our board meetings, what the plan is.
It'll be good to get some steps and some fresh air.
Yes.
After all the sugar.
But we're looking forward to it, and I know Mrs. Rabideau has been doing yeoman's work to get everyone's reservations and choices
Got
in.
me already.
So thank you. We look forward to having everybody be part of that.
You're all gonna get the chance to
thank you.
meet my
It's
husband.
exciting.
I'm gonna do my part about being conservative and give you a folder back.
Michelle will take it.
We can reuse it.
Thank you.
Can I stop the recording now?
Yes, you
Bye,
may.
everybody. See you soon.
So long, thank you.
Christine, good to
So
hear from you
Mrs.
tonight.
Friedman,
Yes.
we'll scan it and have it available for cabinet for tomorrow.